Welcome to Executive Education in Sustainable Fashion. Today we're talking to Lauren Croak and Domenica Leibowitz about the work they've done with the CFDA to provide a guide for sustainability. Welcome to the Executive Education in Sustainable Fashion with my guests this week, Domenica Leibowitz and Lauren Croak. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
So I was just lucky enough to sit in the CFDA, Council of Fashion Designers of America, while you two talked about the incredible report and resource that's now available on the CFDA website. Let's start off by a quick explanation of what that is. Domenica, starting with you.
I spent, I guess a lot of last year working on, as a consultant on a guide to sustainable strategies, which is basically a 230 plus page kind of overview about how you can approach sustainability in your company at all different levels, from whether it's in your supply chain and the materials you choose, all the way to like how to have a green fashion show or how to make your office more sustainable.
That's a critical point, because a lot of people look at sustainability and they think it's for somebody else, or they think, oh my God, I already know what it is and it's huge or it's expensive or whatever it is. But that's not the case. You can address it at every different level. Now, Lauren, you spent many years with Eileen Fisher, which is a byword for sustainability in the fashion industry when so much isn't, frankly. Talk about how that came about at the beginning and what you ended up doing. I mean, how it evolved.
Yeah, I was there for nearly 20 years. So in the late 90s, that the first sustainability team was formed, mostly as an outcome of Eileen really wanting to know more about how her products were made and then who was making them. So there was a lot going on that was an industry norm. And it was surprising. And so that began this sort of journey into exploration on how the products were made and making commitments to trying to make things better.
Well, I think there's something it always strikes me as odd that the older generation, my mother's generation, used to recycle everything because that's just what they did. It was normal. And so when 20 years ago, when you were pioneering this with Eileen Fisher, there wasn't like a sustainability manual. No one even used the word.
Nope.
So you were doing it presumably because it's a smart thing to do, it's good for the business, and it's also the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So you highlighted something else as well, which was that the drive for it came from Eileen.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a very critical point in any company that's trying to be sustainable. It's got to come from the top.
Yes.
The person in charge has got to believe that. Have you seen evidence of that, Domenica?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the company culture is basically a whole section in the guide, and I know Lauren talks about this a lot also, but it really does have to come from the top. I think a statistic, now I'm going to have to get back with you about the name of the study, but shows that like 98% of sustainability initiatives fail because they don't have the leadership and support for the whole team to actually implement the resources that people need and give people the power to make choices that are more sustainable. Basically, your entire company team needs to be on board with sustainability. Everyone needs to be thinking about sustainability in their decision-making process. And it really does come from the top and the culture that's created from the top.
So that actually, the way you describe that is going to be a turn-off for some people, because they're going to be watching this, they're going to think, I've got a big company, I've got 1,000 stores, supply chain network, etc. I believe in it, but my team doesn't. And I've had these guys for 20 years. I don't want to change them all. So how do you go about addressing that? Have you seen examples where companies have struggled but then been successful?
I mean, I have one example where it was the designer who said, I really told her team, I need you to focus on this. This is how I want the brand to be. I want fabrics to be more sustainable. And so when I met with them, I said, so what's happening? And they weren't able to actually make the changes that she kept asking for, which I imagine is like, has to be a struggle. It's like, this is your business.
Yeah.
You're letting your team know what's important to you. But what I found was they didn't have the vernacular. They didn't know how to actually articulate their needs to their partners. So it became this big sort of cloud, and they weren't getting anywhere. So it would then the time would run out and the season needed to be done, and then it just kind of kept moving on. So my work with them was helping them to really hone in and articulate, like, what is it exactly, that you want to shift? And then let's try to have that conversation with your mills or your partners. And then it became easier. So there's nuances like that.
Yeah.
That is such
I'll just say one other company that I love to use as an example is Mara Hoffman, who came to a realization just a couple of years ago, like, wow, this is how the industry works, and I don't want to do this anymore. And she and her team really like turned the whole company around within a couple of years. They just like dove in, and the changes that they were able to implement on a really big scale, like they really rethought their whole company. But it is a
Also
very inspiring.
at a point where she was considering like
Totally.
closing, like just saying we're
So
done.
it saved their company.
yeah, save your
Yeah.
company.
So it's funny. There's two things in what you just said. I'll come back to the second, but right now, the language to communicate what you want is absolutely vital, because the word sustainability is a terrible word. It's awful. What does it mean? I don't know what it
It's
means.
rebranding.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a good advertising
Yeah.
opportunity. Responsibility is quite a nice one, I think.
Yeah.
That works. You know, how can my company be more responsible? But I think what you said is you have to have the language to communicate with your own team, with each other, and then with your partners. Because then you can say to them, I want you to do this. It
Yeah.
might just be, I want you to offset the carbon footprint of delivering
Yeah.
my goods.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
an achievable goal.
It's like someone saying, just be a better person. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so.
Where's the money in being a better
Right,
person?
or
the
what,
way-
like how? What do you mean? So
Yeah.
The way
you
I
do.
talk about it, I feel like to me, sustainability is just good design, plain and simple. And good design not only takes people and the environment into account, which actually does pay off in terms of business.
Yeah.
We were talking about there, like the data shows that having a sustainability strategy and plan in place in your company, like actually those companies do better over time in terms of profitability. And also in terms of like the if you're thinking long term, sustainability is like a no-brainer, because we need these resources,
Yeah.
And you need your people
Well,
to
you've got-
continue in the future.
Yeah,
So
there's two
good
things
design.
in what you say. You've got to be an attractive company to get the right people to come and work for you.
Yeah.
Definitely. But if you're not embracing sustainability, then 5 years from now, when the world is caught on and everybody is, you're the only guy that's not. It's like being the last guy in town that's still selling leaded fuel.
Yeah.
Or you could be caught short. It might be a resource
Yeah.
you rely on right now that is not going to be there. So then what?
Yeah.
And it's harder to turn. We talk about turning the ship around. It's like
Yeah.
becomes that big of,
Yeah.
that hard and arduous to try to make those shifts. So
Yeah.
how do you get ahead of it and
Yeah.
start to think more about what the future of your business is going to look like and how are you going to, survive?
Yeah.
That again, that's really solid, I think, guidance.
Yeah.
Because anyone running a business, their business is to figure out what's happening in the future. How do
Yeah.
I plan for the future?
Yeah.
And this is a free lesson on how to plan for the future.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
coming, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, another favorite example is Kering, the luxury umbrella company, and they've come up with incredible resources, all of which they provide on their website for free for you to use. An incredible tool to calculate business environmental impact into your business calculations. But they've also, like, from their perspective, you look at what they're doing slowly, like they're buying up their supply chain, like whether it's like a precious skin, like
Yeah.
farm or whatever it is, or even like Chanel buying up all of the artisanal like houses of like a beating house, and these companies actually are seeing like these things need preserving and they need protecting, and so that's why I think sustainability is such a big part of the business plan for them.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that always strikes me when I'm in China, where a lot of the people watching this are going to be based, because there's such scale there, but there's also the ability to affect very quick change.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is very exciting, because, there may or may not be good things happening anywhere in the world, but if you're in a position where you can affect that change very quickly, you have the ingenuity and the logistical power and the resources to do that, you can make really positive change.
Absolutely.
So let's talk for a moment about some of the problems companies face, because you've been providing solutions, which means I'm sure you've come across problems, and we discussed the sort of the leader wants to achieve sustainability, but maybe some of the team don't. So communication.
Yep.
I think you mentioned caring. I interviewed François-Henri Pinault, and he talked about the fact that sustainability is built into the review of the CEOs. You're not successful. Bottom line is important, but if you haven't achieved a sustainability goal as well, you're not successful.
Wow.
And I've heard there's some CEOs that are tying it to their leadership team's performance,
Yeah.
and making it part of their objectives, which I think is brilliant, because then they're being sort of measured and reviewed against these core sustainability goals, and then they're working with their team. So you're pushing the shifts throughout the culture. And so sometimes maybe if it is with people that aren't so into it, if you tie it to performance, they can
Yeah.
start to see it a little bit differently if that's the way that they can sort of move into action rather than it feeling aligned with who their personal values.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly one approach is that, to make it part of their goal.
Yeah.
But I think I'm also interested in, how do you encourage somebody to want to do it? You know, not just that it's the carrot and stick, isn't it? I mean, you can certainly make them do it with a stick, but making more money is a great driver for people to do the right thing. And I know that companies do achieve that. You know, they are more successful if they behave sustainability, not just for the future, but, you know, right now. But I do want to quickly return, though, to what challenges have we seen and how have people got over it? Because people are watching this and they're thinking, well, I can't do it because I got that and I got that and I got that. I don't know how to get around that. You know, so what have we seen that people have addressed, though? What kind of challenges have they addressed?
I mean, there's one in particular with a brand that I work with. It's fairly large. It's got over, I don't know, 500 employees. So you have a lot to work with there.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of passion in the design, merch, manufacturing, production teams to make some environmental shifts. And so they primarily shipped everything by air, which is really expensive. There's an environmental impact to it. And we had this really, really good conversation about let's set some goals to, you know, try to reduce air shipments by X. And there was all this energy. We had this fantastic workshop. And so I said, so what if sales is meeting with a wholesale account, and that wholesale account wants you to chase down a product? Or so all of a sudden it became, okay, there was a realization that you can't just try to solve it in one area. You have to really think through these sort of implications, or we talk a lot about unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So if, say, you know, a department store comes in and needs this thing and sales commits to it, now they're chasing it, right? So the teams are taxed. And we talk a lot sustainably. We talk a lot about it from a human perspective, like time waste, mind, body sort of wellness. Like that's an important element in terms of people. But so they're taxed because they've got to chase it. Now you're likely subcontracting it out, and a lot of times when it's not in your backyard, you don't know who it's being subcontracted to. So are those workers being treated fairly? Are they being paid a fair wage? Now it's going by air. Now it costs more money.
Yeah.
You know, so everything sort of best laid plans have just gone out the window because everybody is not aligned around a common and shared goals. So that I've seen happening, but it's also an opportunity for them to like, okay, now we know as we're thinking through things what kind of commitments we're going to make, and they have to share that with their partners, their business partners.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just transparency is like one of the biggest hurdles, and also like the most amazing step that you can take is just really know your supply chain. Just figure it out. Like really go dig deep. Go see it in person. Go form relationships with your suppliers. I think once you know stuff, you can't unknow it. You can't ignore.
Yeah.
You can't ignore the facts. And the more you have a personal relationship with people, the more personal and important things feel.
I used to, at one point I was in the fashion industry as a creative director for Nike, actually, and I remember certain suppliers we'd work with would say, if you want to see how your production is getting on, go online and look at it, because we've got cameras in all of our production facilities, so you can just have a look. It's fine. That to me that's open. That's being open about where you're manufacturing. I have a friend who is the head of production for one of the big European groups, and he said, we know every factory we've worked with. We know every one of them. We know what their capacity is, and we know if we order 10 garments over the capacity, they're going down the road. And we probably have an idea about where they're going to a different facility, but they might not be getting checked out to the degree that the ones we're publicly working with are. So the fact that people say, oh, we had no idea it was being subcontracted, yes, they did. Yes, they did. And if they didn't, it's because they weren't hiring people to bother to check it out.
Right.
So I'm a long way past giving them any credit for not knowing what was going on, if only we'd known.
Right.
Yeah.
So on that positive note, let's talk a little bit about the other work that you guys do, because I know that you both contributed and led the CFDA reports, but you do other things as well. So Lauren, what else do you do?
So I work with a lot of brands in the fashion industry, but also in the educational sectors and medical industry, and it really is about trying to just demystify and bring things down to sort of a baseline for people to step into creating more sustainable strategies, whether it is around sustainability or it's about their business model, just really trying to strip it down and help them to think more collaboratively, but also just creating opportunities for like a co-collaboration for them to take their business forward.
And that's a new thing, because if a company is watching this and they're thinking, how do I, all right, I believe in sustainability, I'm the CEO, how can I affect it? Hire somebody like you to come in and look at their business and offer the experience you've had with other businesses and help them to define their goals, work on the language, learn from other people's mistakes, etc.
Yeah, and one of the things it was like a big aha for me when I was still at Eileen Fisher was when we were trying to move into like the digital transformation, era, was the importance of just a learning journey, and for like the designer and the executives is how to bring them into something that they're not versed in. It needs some exploration, but the value of that is so huge for people to feel like, oh, I get this now. I can step into this. I can start to ask questions. I feel like I can engage. Like the power of something as basic as a learning journey is huge.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to see examples of people who have done well at it.
Yeah.
What about you, Domenica?
Yeah, my career is definitely, I've worked both as a creative and on the nonprofit side with sustainability, kind of being a central core.
Non-profit?
Yeah, nonprofit. I
You're
actually
all about maximum profit.
both, I guess, though I'm not all about maximum profit personally.
Well,
but
I find non-profit ironic though, because you actually want to make loads of money, you just don't want to call it profit because you want to spend it on whatever the business exists to spend it on. Anyway,
I don't necessarily want to make loads of money, though that might be a very counter.
I meant for the business. But yes.
I think you should make enough money and then support your people and the people that you love. But again, coming back to, I mean, I think the exciting time about sustainability now and the sustainable fashion movement is that there is so much data out there to show that you can really, sustainability can save you money. They're one of the easiest programs that I think helps you recognize that is the NRDC Clean by Design program, which actually is focused on Chinese mills in particular, in general. But basically, going into a mill, which is whether a wet processing facility, like a dye house, it's really about how do you first of all, just measuring, exploring, measuring how much are you using of all these things, installing meters, and then figuring out solutions to cut down on different resources and making things just simply more efficient. Those facilities can save $800,000 a year, which is the amount really adds up quickly. Whatever you invest in installing a meter is so insignificant compared to the return on investment. I think there are so many exciting, and again, I think if you look at a company like Patagonia, where really they put people first, and they get kind of almost more activists as they sued the government. They become a little more extreme with time. As they become kind of more extreme, they are growing as a company. Their consumers, they see what the company values are, and they are ready to get behind it. They buy more of their stuff.
What you said inspired a sort of train of thought which ended up with Formula One, right? Because if you think about a Formula One car, every single person in that process has to be the absolute best they could possibly be, because you can't, how could you not?
Yeah.
The car's going at 200 miles an hour, it has to win, it has to be safe, it has to be quick, all these different things. So every part of it has to be perfect. In a lot of the talks that I give around the world, and the basis for We Design was about brilliance only, just do it brilliantly. So to me, the extension of that, I was talking to somebody last night whose company makes tiny little microchips that you can put in every part of your system, which monitor the performance of that part, so you never get a breakdown because it knows it's going to break down. So you can take, you don't lose a day's production because one of the cogs broke because you already knew it was going to break. The paying attention, and it's funny because people think of sustainability as organic or something like that. No, you can be sustainable by just making your machine last longer because you took better care of it and it worked more effectively, and so you make more money, you spend less on replacements.
Yeah, again, there's so many different ways to approach sustainability and to start that. You can find a way that's really easy. I think both of our goals in our work in sustainability is to really help companies understand that it's personal and that you can really start anywhere at all. And once you start, it just kind of snowballs from there.
So help people who are watching this to figure out how to go beyond the stigma of sustainability. Because if an engineer walks into a meeting and said, I can make more money by putting microchips in every little cog in my machine, and it will run longer and more efficiently and quicker, and it will produce more stuff. I imagine everyone in the meeting would go, that's brilliant, let's do it right now. It happens to be a sustainable way of looking at it, but you didn't mention sustainability. Whereas if the designer went in and went, yeah, we should be more sustainable, they'd be like, yeah, okay, right, we're doing sustainability on Friday, we'll let you know. So how do we break that down? You know, how do we get past that, the knee-jerk response to, it's not for me?
I think we need to reframe our whole conversation about growth, actually. I know that everyone wants to grow and everyone wants to make money, but again, like this idea that you always have to be continually growing and making more money is, again, it's not, that's a totally unsustainable idea in itself. So, again, I think it comes back to your personal values, especially as like a CEO or the owner of a company. Like, what is the life that you want? How do you support your people, and what number do you need to reach to achieve that? And again, I know people just want to make money, but at the end of the day, we really need to figure out like what is our purpose here, and why are we doing this? And good values. Money follows good values.
When sustainability comes up, people, myself included, often say, well, you've got to sustain the life of people in a village if the factory supports them.
Yeah.
And that's what it leads me to think about the luxury groups, particularly the two big French ones. The fact is they sustain certain artisanal practices because they need them.
Yeah.
And if they could do it better, they would. And that kind of means if they could do it more expensively, they would. But of course they have an eye on the bottom line, as they must, because they've got to pay everyone's wages. But embracing sustainability doesn't mean spending more money and making less profit.
Right.
Your motive can't just be I need to make more money, but that can still be one of them.
Yeah.
You just got to do everything better.
Yeah, and it's like is how I was talking about, like, is how you make your money as important as like why you choose to, like, why do you want to be in business in the first place? And so how you actually conduct your business should be just as important as why you're in it to begin with.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot of, there's nothing in nature that just continues growing unless it's like a weed or, something that's not good for you, I'm sure. So there is a moment of like having to sort of like ebb and flow and sort of recalibrate and, nurture the soil that you need to rely on things to kind of grow from. So it really should be a question about profitability and doing the right things with the profits and putting them back into the areas that will sustain, your business, but also the livelihood of, what people rely on. So it's I think it's just a shift of the way people have to think about the businesses that they're in.
Yeah. So I think as they approach that, looking at the CFDA report, there are worksheets within it. And Caring, I believe, has a worksheet as well on their site, which is great, open source to everybody. So there are plenty of ways of doing even just a cursory analysis of what you're doing and what you could be doing.
Yeah.
What surprised you putting together this report? Because you both, you've obviously sustainability is something that's very important to you. You've been working on it many years. This report took, some time, but it's relatively recent. What surprised you in doing it?
I would say for me, the complexity, I think that people feel an enormous sort of responsibility to be doing something, but almost as if like they needed to be an expert in all things. And it's so complex, there's so many areas, there's so many topics. And so what surprised me most was that, wow, if we just take a really basic approach to talking about it and like finding like little nuggets for them to be able to step into, that had the biggest outcome and the biggest sort of like momentum than trying to like tackle things at like the supply chain or like measuring the the chemicals in your dyes. It's like you'll get there, but I overestimated the power of just bringing people into the conversation in a very sort of entry sort of way.
Yeah, in the talk earlier, you mentioned having a meeting about sustainability, having a regular catch-up.
Yep.
I've always been delighted by when you bring a team together and you say, right, who's already doing something? Someone's already doing something.
Yeah.
And it could be, well, we have a recycling club and we meet once a week and we recycle stuff. Great, okay, let's embrace that. And it's the little bit that starts and then everyone starts to embrace it and it carries on. What surprised you, Domenica?
I think that doing this project was so amazing because I basically stepped back and looked at the whole picture because I was trying to think about the whole picture and how to break it down for people. But I got to really think about the whole industry in a way that I hadn't before. And a few things definitely stand out. One is that there's more collaboration than ever, especially when I started in sustainability. Yeah, all these little nonprofits were competing with other nonprofits, and it was just like, wow, there's no room in this space for competition. And now companies and organizations and governments are being so open about sharing the work and sharing the solutions, which I think is really exciting. I'm also really excited about kind of students, actually. Fashion education has really changed, and students really care about sustainability. I'm really excited for these next waves of generations going out into the fashion industry. I think that we're going to see a lot of really exciting changes.
You're optimistic?
Well, I was going to say the one thing that's really troubling that I saw is that I definitely see the global sustainability conversation and data really skews big corporation. Again, this idea of how do we make all our money and be sustainable too? And actually, we can't do all of those things right now. And I think there are some really, again, I would recommend that every fashion company use the HIG tools to measure sustainability. But right now, the HIG tools are very much most of the data put into those tools is from these huge corporations, which really skews the results. And what we're looking at is basically one of the few resources for industry data, because there is our whole industry has been talking about this vast lack of data, and there really is. So we're basically collecting very little, very biased data, and we're using that data to make global collective decisions about what the way forward is in sustainability.
Everybody.
Yeah. Right. So we basically, especially I think it's so exciting to work with the CFDA who had worked with brands of all sizes, but really for every small brand and medium-sized brand out there, they're so undervalued, their input in the sustainability movement and conversation, and they really make up a huge part of the market. And everybody needs to participate in these kind of global initiatives so that it's not so biased, because it definitely is biased toward corporations.
All right. So as we draw to a close, I want to ask you a big final question, which is, what advice do you have? So for the CEOs and the people that are in positions of influence watching this, they're like, okay, well, I buy it. I believe it. So, I can get a club together in my group. I can start with a small project. I can look at some of the research. But what advice, what do you want people to go away with thinking about this, Lauren?
Their culture. Really sitting down and talking about the company culture, really outlining your values and aligning them to the things that you're passionate about, and then bring people in, bring your employees in, bring your partners in, and engage in a dialogue, because when people feel like they're co-creating, you're going to be aligned around a common sort of shared agenda and purpose. And I don't think you can you'll maybe make some moves, like you're saying, like a little change here, a little change there, but it won't be in this sort of paradigm way that I think we're expecting, shifts to happen for a more positive outcome.
That was very quick, and you reminded me immediately of culture has strategy for breakfast.
Yes.
That famous term.
That's
which
true.
it does.
It does.
Yeah.
What about you, Domenica?
I'd say I love Let My People Go Surfing, Yvonne Chouinard's book about company culture. I feel like I just say you can do it. I am very positive. I think that now is the time. Not only are there more incredible resources than ever to help you on your journey, but it's literally now is the time before it's too late, before certain things happen to our world. Use the resources that we put so much love into. Hire a consultant, find great partners. It's personal. It starts with the culture, but then there's so many ways to get started and do whatever you can. And be creative.
Yeah.
I love that. And the fact is, it's coming anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're in any kind of industry that has any chance of any international competition, which frankly everyone is, then be aware. It's coming and you need to be at the head of it.
Yeah. We need Nike to share their tagline of just do it in the realm of sustainability.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be a nice collaboration.
Yeah. Well, for me the question is, how do we get Nike and Adidas and Walmart and Target and H&M and Zara and Uniqlo and a handful of others to work together, and then we have sustainability.
Yeah. Well, they have in many. That's how the HIG index got created. Really, was when some of those companies put their measurement systems together, and they all are trying in their own ways.
And a lot of open source information is really impressive.
Yeah.
You can go on Levi's website, you can go on Nike, and they're sharing their supplier list.
Yeah.
They're sharing their codes of conduct, and that wasn't something that was happening even a few years ago. So it's refreshing, and I think more of it will happen. And those that don't want to play, they're probably going to be left behind. So.
So how about that? So it makes you more money. All the information's out there for free anyway. Everybody
Most
wants to
part.
work with you. Your
Yeah.
team are probably already doing it.
creative.
And by the way, it's better for the world. I mean, it's really hard to argue with all that, isn't it?
No brainer.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
A no-brainer. There you go.
It makes people happier.
On that note, we'll draw to a close. Thank you very much. This was really informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Now join us online and on social media with our experts so we can answer your questions directly and keep this conversation going.